Mark, we're going to lead off with you. How do you view this Final Four? Because I think that UConn is a very clear favorite to be able to win the title, and if you look in the futures market, you're laying right around minus 120 to minus 125 for them to be able to win it. And I just take a look at sort of that futures price, and I think that it's correct. I wouldn't want to lay it just with how harebrained and crazy this tournament is, but at the same time, I just can't advocate for taking a plus number on anyone else.
Yeah, that's the thing is, so like this year in the tournament, there's just the historical information you can kind of throw out the window. It's been almost like a historical outlier in that sense. So that's what makes you so cautious about taking UConn, because all season, teams have tried to pull away. They haven't been able to. When we see UCLA start to pull away, they get banged up. We see Houston start to pull away. They run into some injuries and fall apart, So we just seen it so many times out of the team that we expect to go all the way and, end up being the national champion and assert themselves, that it's kind of, you get a little queasy back in UConn, not only for that reason, but for the fact that they really haven't been tested. Last time we saw them late in the game in a one-possession game, they lost to Marquette in the Big East tournament. So there's some questions there of how they'll react down the stretch if they get in that situation again. But they are clearly, from a talent perspective, better than any of these other three teams by a pretty significant margin. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But I agree with you. I wouldn't want to lay the number with UConn here. But it's tough to kind of figure out, which of the other big underdogs really have a chance to knock them off, just because there's such a big talent edge there.
I agree with you, and I'll throw this to you, Colby, as well. Is there a team that you take a look at and you see a little bit of value on them to be able to knock off UConn and or perhaps Miami in the national title game? Or do you think that this is really UConn's to lose at this point?
I mean, I think the Miami Hurricanes are going to beat UConn. So,
oh boy,
I think UConn hasn't played elite guard play this whole tournament. They've got fortunate that they got Gonzaga and not UCLA. I thought they got they played Arkansas, who not only had injuries but also I don't think their guard play is what defines Arkansas basketball. Pretty much every single team they played, I guess you could make the case St. Mary's, but they lack athleticism. Well, Miami has great guard play and they have athletes. You go back and look at UConn's losses throughout the year. It's been to teams with really good guard play. I think another angle is Jim Larrañaga. I think he's a better, more proven coach. And if you look at this tournament, I think it's been a classic case of great coaching. Go back to the Drake game. They're down. Miami was getting beat pretty much the whole game. I was on Drake, right? 5-minute mark, 6-minute mark. Larrañaga switches to the full court press, and boy, did that ruin the tempo and everything that Drake had going. Miami comes storming back, wins the game. We saw it in the Texas game. It wasn't the full court press, but he made some minor adjustments that I thought were pretty key on them coming back and then riding momentum to a dub. So, and as far as being, the smaller team, Houston, great rebounding team, much like UConn. What happened? Right, I think Miami right now is playing great ball. Now, Norchad Omir's got to stay out of foul trouble, but I think the Miami Hurricanes have great value, and I think they can beat the UConn Huskies.
I think that is so interesting that you bring that up, because I'm not sure where you stand on this, Mark, but I take a look at the spread in Miami versus UConn at 5.5, and it's the max I'm willing to lay with UConn, because I think that something that Colby brought up, Norchad Omir needing to stay out of foul trouble, that's going to be big, but on top of that, with Miami, my biggest fear with them is that they haven't faced off against quite this good of a front line, because if Norchad Omir was only going up against Adama Sanogo, only going up against Dominic Klingon, someone like that, I think that he'd be able to win that battle. But just because of the depth of the just overall forward play of UConn, I think that that's going to make this a very tough task.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And that's one of the things. And, one of the genius part about Larrañaga was basically how he was able to turn water into wine, against Texas and keeping Omir out of foul trouble. Nailey has to do that against UConn. They can just throw so many bigs at him in the post, really get him into foul trouble. So I think that's going to be the key here, is I think they're going to be able to get him out of the game early, because they're going to be able to draw contact against him. And I think that's where UConn kind of takes over. The one thing about this UConn team, we talked about, they haven't been tested in close games. Well, that's because they have that maturity to where they can put teams away, when they get ahead of them in the second half. We've seen them just turn on the switch. I just think they have a lot of length and athleticism on the perimeter to where they can match up with Miami. And, I think the way Miami has to attack UConn is to kind of get past the perimeter and really work that mid-range, part of the court, that mid-range game to kind of stay. You don't want to get too far down low. They're going to send it in the third row. But if they can work that mid-range game, kind of drive and penetrate, I think they'll be okay. But I think it's a real difficult task. Margin of error really small here for Miami. So I'll probably end up laying the points with UConn. I haven't bet it yet, but I just don't think I can take the dog in this one.
Yeah, I think that it's very difficult for me to be able to get behind Miami just because, once again, with no Chad O'Meara, he's incredible. The one thing he isn't is two guys, and that's what you're going to be facing off against with Sanogo, along with Klingon. And when it comes to who Miami is going to be facing off in the national title game for you, Cody, who do you take, or Colby, who do you think they're going to be facing off against? Because we've got Florida Atlantic and we've got San Diego State, with San Diego State being between a 2.5 and a 3-point favorite. And out of the teams remaining in the field, I think that there are two teams with a very demonstrative forte. Miami with their offense, San Diego State with their defense, while Florida Atlantic, UConn, they're a little bit more well-rounded bunches that they don't necessarily have that one true dynamic strength. And I think that it is very interesting to take a look at this one with San Diego State, because my big fear with them is, are they going to be able to score enough in this circumstance?
Yeah, I mean, but I love the way they guard the three. And I think that is something you have to circle in this matchup. Florida Atlantic's a great 3-point shooting team. And the way that San Diego State really brings you into that defensive grind, brings you into the muck or the mud, whatever you want to say, I think that's their advantage. And I know Florida Atlantic's a great defensive team too, but I still believe San Diego State, I ignore the analytics here. I think they're the better actual defense in San Diego State. And I think, you get Brian Dutcher, you give him all week. I think he's going to create some problems for the Owls. Another thing that really, I think, you go back to that Memphis game where Florida Atlantic barely got by them. Probably shouldn't have gotten by them. Probably the one game they should have lost. Memphis was super experienced. All right. And super athletic. What is San Diego State? Super experienced, super athletic. And I think just an overall better basketball team than Memphis. I think down the stretch, San Diego State makes enough plays to get this thing done. I do think this will be a close game, though, with about 2-3 minutes left, because I don't expect a lot of scoring. I expect this to be high 50s, if, maybe early 60s, but probably high 50s. Give me the Aztecs, though, to get it done.
I do like the under as well. I set my total more around a 129.5. I think that this is a good old first to 65 game wins if either team is able to get to 65. So we're in agreement there. And Mark, in terms of San Diego State versus Florida Atlantic, where are you leaning on this one? Because personally, I lean towards Florida Atlantic. I do think that being a little bit more well-rounded is going to be big. And I just have the fear that with San Diego State, they're amazing at guarding the three. Last two rounds, the team shot a combined 5 of 44, and even for the best defenses, that's not sustainable in my opinion.
Yeah, I like Florida Atlantic, especially with the 3 points here. You're getting more than one bucket. I like it. I think, they have it's 7 guards they can really throw at you. They can shoot. So what they can do is spread out that Aztec defense, especially on the perimeter, and they can attack the weak link. So it's, everybody on San Diego State has to guard the 3 well in this matchup. They're going to have to, they're going to have to do better in the post, but I like the fact that Florida Atlantic can do that. And one of the main things is the mental toughness that this team has showed. They were down at halftime against Memphis. They were down at halftime against Tennessee. They were able to out-bully Tennessee, against Kansas State. They out-rebounded them 2-1, 14-5 on the offensive glass. So they can play physical when they need to. They can come back when they're down. And in close games, they've been money. I want to say they're 11-1 this season in games decided by 5 or less points. So when this game gets down to the nitty-gritty in the last couple minutes, I'm more confident that John L. Davis and those guys are going to be able to make the shots, as opposed to, Trammell and Matt Bradley, who, really had an off-shooting game, last game. So I just think when it comes down to the final few buckets, I'm more confident that the Owls are going to be able to get it done here.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.